Hello, everyone. My name is Rafal, and I would like to welcome everyone into my today's podcast. Today, I have an amazing guest, David Shoukry, who is fantastic portrait photographer. I've been following him for a long time. I love the colors he uses, the patterns, like the lighting. Everything is just on the completely different level. And David was kind enough to join the podcast today. And then we're going to dive into his amazing world of portrait photography. And we're going to discuss some of, hopefully, he will share some secrets. We'll see how that's going to go. But I definitely I'm interested to learn a little bit about, your concepts, where this whole idea is coming from, what's your background of photography, how you even got into this whole thing. So welcome to the podcast, and I'm really looking forward to talk to you today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so good to be here.
Absolutely. So let's jump in right away. So please tell me, before we jump into some of those specific questions about your amazing work, tell me a little bit more about yourself. Like, how did you get into this photography? How long you've been doing this? Is this is something you just started recently, or this is like an ongoing thing for many, many, many years? It seems like it. So I just want to know a little bit the background of your photography journey. How did you get where you are right now?
Okay, well, I've always been interested in photography and been shooting for a very long time, but I've only been shooting full time professionally for 8 years.
Okay.
So the first half of my career was spent as a classical musician. So
Oh, wow. Okay.
I'm a pianist. All of my professional training is as a piano player and an academic musician. So for 17 years, I did that, playing and teaching, working. Working all around the world doing that. And 8 or 9 years ago, I decided to kind of make the change. I had an international move. I was previously living in Asia. I had several years living and working in India and then in Malaysia after that. And when I returned to the UK, I decided to make the change then. So that's the story
That's
of
the story.
how the career started, and have just been shooting portraits like I do now since then.
So that's quite a kind of, it's still artistic field, but it's quite a shift from being a musician into photography. So there was like a, I don't know, desire for photography, or that was something which was in you for the whole time, or how did you discover that you want to even make that shift? Because I know, as a musician, going into like from, I don't know, sound artistry to like visual artistry, it's a huge gap, right? Or you want to just kind of connect both of those.
Yeah, so it was basically when I made the move back to the UK. I'd been thinking of changing of moving into photography full time, but I didn't know whether I could make it work or whether it was even worth trying. And I just gave it a go. I think what it was is nothing went wrong in the musical career or anything like that, and I still play tons of music. Um, as a player, but just for fun. But I just didn't want to keep doing the same thing for the whole of my life. I didn't want to sort of drift through doing, just doing the same kind of things. And it seemed, with the international move, it seemed like as good a time as any to make that change. And obviously, it's always a bit of a risk if you make some big career leap. But it's worked out okay,
Mhm.
and I'm enjoying life very much.
Absolutely. So why did you choose portrait photography? Because there is tons of different genres, right? There's a landscape, you name it. There's a lot of stuff. Why you got kind of hooked on portrait photography? Like, was the particular reason behind this, or did you know like right away this is what type of photography I'm going after?
Yeah, well, it's the most interesting thing for me because it involves being with people
Hmm.
and interacting with people, and that was it basically.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
being with people as opposed to being
Did you
with
try any other type of photography, or that was like, okay, I'm jumping straight into portrait photography?
Yeah, I mean, I've always had a general interest in the other aspects of photography, landscapes and a bit of abstract photography
Mhm.
and stuff like that, which I do for fun. But I think I mean, being practical, portrait photography is the best way to get paid.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
and with a kind of career change, I
Mhm.
obviously had to choose something where, as well as doing something I enjoyed, it was something where I was going to be able to make a living as well. And
Mhm.
I'm not an expert with the other aspects of the business of photography, so I'm
Mhm.
sure people make decent livings shooting nice travel photography and stuff like that, but I just didn't know how to do it.
Mhm.
um and so I work with people primarily who use the pictures for their careers, or editorial, or some other uh sort of professional reason why people need portraits. So
Mhm.
yeah, there's a sort of practical reason, but it's mostly to do with being with other people and interacting with other people and creating, which I enjoy so much.
It's kind of interesting because I've been hearing this from literally everyone who I'm, well, talking to or interviewing or doing those podcasts, that one of the main reasons why they want to do portrait or headshot photography is just the interactions with people. And my background, what was also interesting, I was shooting weddings for 10 years. And then I was just like, okay, I'm done because it was just too many people. But then when I shifted into, portrait and headshot photography, then I could really start kind of getting completely different vibe from people, right? Because everyone is different, everyone has a different approach, different personalities, and this connection you have to create as a photographer with each individual is just, I think this is what is the most addicting thing in what we do, right? That every photo session is different. So that's, I think, what is fascinating. And I really admire even your explanation, because I think we all feel the same thing. So let's shift the gears and let's dive in a little bit more deeper into your photography world. And I want to talk a little bit more about your concepts, how this whole thing kind of started. Did you just had these ideas which you were like, okay, this is the style which I like, or did you develop this over the time and you were trying different things and this is what I like, this is what I don't like, and this style of your photography, which is, by the way, extremely, in my opinion, unique, and then you have this kind of own specific style, which is amazing. I just want to kind of understand a little bit, how did you get there, like, how the process looked like on your end.
Okay, well, it has developed gradually, the same as for anybody else, I suppose. And I've just started off by having s- heroes, I guess you would say, in the photographic world, that whose work I really admire. And it just started off by trying to do things like them, or taking elements of
Mhm.
their work and trying to make it my own. And I spent a long time making learning how to get the lighting to to a standard, to a way that
Mhm.
I really like. And I think with creative people, anybody that works really hard at
Mhm.
their kind of creative job, we're often the most critical about what we do. And I instantly look for the worst things I can find in my own photography, and I've worked through those to those issues to try and get to a point where I actually like the work that I do. But the portrait photography that I'm doing now. It started off on a just on a simpler scale, I guess,
Mhm.
in terms of the design of the pictures and stuff like that. But the lighting concepts have remained relatively similar all the
Similar.
time I've been doing this professionally. And I've just taken my lead from very, very well known names in
Mhm.
portrait photography that everybody knows: Annie Leibovitz, Irving Penn,
Mhm.
Mark Seliger, Mark Mann in New York. Lots of very, very well known mainstream editorial photographers. And I've just tried to add my own, learn what I can from those people, and develop my own style from there.
Mhm. Perfect. So tell me a little bit more also about, like, let's say you have a client and they comes in, they want to, shoot with you. They want to, I don't know, create this session. How does process look like? You kind of showcasing them, okay, this is the concept, this is the idea, or you work with your client individually? Okay, this is what we can do. We also need to somehow implement my style, like how this process of creating specific shoot looks like. And I want to talk a little bit about in the relationship with the client. The clients just leave that up to you, or you work with the clients to create specific images which they want, or they require.
It's a combination of all of those things, actually. Sometimes people will come to me and say, okay, I just want some lovely pictures, and they'll show me examples of my work that they like already and say, can we create something like that? And that's the easiest thing for me, or not the easiest thing, but probably the most enjoyable, because I can just get on and do what I do. Sometimes clients will have a specific brief that they're looking for, and that may be something that I do or don't do ordinarily. And then for some of the editorial jobs, there will be a specific concept in mind. But what I'm really doing with clients initially is working from color. So that's where I start with almost every job I do, and then just sometimes people have specific clothing that they want to wear, and then I will try and match that up with set design ideas and color ideas and things like that, and just work. I mean, I know that using the word vibe is awful, because it's simultaneously means a lot and doesn't mean anything at all, but really working towards a vibe and the character of the final shoot, and that's really the starting point. I mean, lots of people that I work with are happy for me to just get on and produce the photos, and we'll kind of work as we go. And if we need to change things in the shoot, if somebody doesn't like what I'm doing, then I don't mind, and we can just change it. But that's the process, effectively.
So let's go even deeper into this thing, because like on so many of your images, I've seen this specific fabrics with specific patterns and colors. Like, how you choosing those? Like, are you going for some kind of, you getting inspired by some other photographers, or you going kind of on your own to find something which is gonna bring some specific flavor to your images? Because I've noticed you have really, really specific style when it comes to all those little tiny elements which are on the background. We're going to talk about the subject as well later on, but I want to dive in a little bit more deeper into the background types and styles and patterns, and then combination on putting them together. Because like, this is also what I got really not only inspired, but also like what caught my attention, that sometimes you don't use like one specific background, you just mixing them up, and you're using reds and then greens and some all those different colors, and you put them together, which I think is something unique, and I never seen this before, which I think that's what also kind of draw me so much to your work. So if we could just talk a little bit about it.
Okay, so the backdrops that I use are a combination of, they're like purpose designed ones, so they're real photography backdrops.
Yeah.
And a combination of those and just mainstream fabrics. So the majority of the photo backdrops are made here in the UK for me. So they're the guy who makes them, his company is called Hand Painted Backdrops, and the majority of the ones that I've got are kind of custom designs, if you like. I mean, I will show him a concept, an image that I like from somewhere else, and it's not copying pre-existing backdrops. It will be things like a wall that I like, and I will say to him, can you make one that has similar textures? And so with those setups, I'm sort of primarily grouping those backdrops in neutral tones and trying to balance different kinds of textures in there, and using them to make set designs that add something to the overall composition, so that it's not simply a photo on a plain background. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, of course, but I'm just trying to do something a bit more creative. So that's my starting point there.
So if you don't mind, I'm gonna show a couple images here. We're gonna discuss them a little bit later, but I think people would like to kind of probably see
Yeah.
what exactly I'm talking about. Let me show some of this stuff. So that's what I found extremely amazing. That you're not just working with one background, you're using several different ones, and you're just creating this amazing pattern of texture and colors. So perfect. So do you have like bunch of them and you just try to kind of work with them, or you just kind of constantly seeking for something different and something new?
Well, a bit of both actually. I do have quite a lot of these backdrops, and they are. I can kind of group them into color palettes. So the one that you've selected there is all kind of autumn or fall colors,
Okay.
and so what I was doing there was I chose the backgrounds to match her outfit. So this was
Mhm.
actually taken at a lighting workshop. So
Okay.
um, there was some room for creativity, basically. And so what I was doing, her outfit is basically a kind of autumn shade of red, I guess you
Mhm.
could say. And I was just trying to balance all of those autumn colors.
Mhm.
And they are so they're draped in such a way as there are leading lines that
Mhm.
point in towards her, and with the lighting style, what I was doing there was using a gobo. I almost
Okay.
forgot the word there. So there's a gobo on the right hand side, and it's firing an orange gelled hard strobe through it, and that's what's creating. It sort of helps bring out the drapes and the folds and the backdrops and things like that, and you get that hard shadow on the background as well.
Mhm.
But yeah, all of it is that was shot in my little studio, and the backdrops are simply mounted onto a bar that's uh, attached to the ceiling,
Mhm.
um, and that is it. So it's yeah, it was just the full or autumn background,
Background.
and yeah,
Perfect.
that's the concept.
Okay. Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about, things which photographers want to hear the most. And this is kind of like, it's not like I don't want to talk about it, but I think, like it's something which is part of the process, I guess.
Hmm.
But I just want to dive a little bit deeper into your lighting.
Yeah.
Again, how this whole thing, like, if you could just tell me a little bit maybe what you're using, and let's talk a little bit about just how you love to light your subject, and just give me some kind of informations about the entire concept of, are you like simplest, you like simply lighting, or you just going into some more complicated stuff? Also, how this whole thing kind of develop over the years?
Okay. So the easiest thing to talk about is the actual equipment, which is very straightforward. So all of the lights that I use are Elechrome strobes.
Hmm.
Um, but you can do this with any kind of strobe, and
Yes.
the modifiers that I'm using are a 100 centimeter or 39-inch deep
Okay.
octabox.
Repellents,
Um,
because I'm using the same.
yeah, yeah, and the 150 centimeter, or I think it's 59-inch
Hmm.
in American, the indirect, the very big indirect octabox.
Okay.
And so most of these lighting looks are a combination of uh, a key light plus bounced strobes. So I think the main way that I'm getting this lighting look is by bouncing light from walls or
Okay.
V flats, um, and uh, it is that makes this lighting style possible in small spaces. So you can do this uh, with scrims and things like that, but you need a lot of space for that to create the very big fill light. And
Hmm.
so for almost all of the images that you've chosen there, it is those basic principles, and the specific the specific look that you end up getting with these photos is just down to the light positioning. So I will always go for feathered lighting with the key light, and it's really the way that I'm achieving these looks is simply by testing. Just by I'll be in the studio and just move the light around. And I mean, one or two of the other images that you've got there were shot using the gobo that I yeah, that one, and the
Mhm.
one at the top there, the girl with the afro hair. They were shot with the gobo as a kind of accent light, I guess you'd say, and it just creates a dappled pattern on the background. And I am blocking off or flagging off part of the gobo so that it doesn't light the model too much, because that very hard light doesn't look too flattering. And all of those setups, if I remember correctly, are using some bounce fill as well to get
Mhm.
that even look. And what I tend to do with the images that are darker are I will use the 100 centimeter octobox for those, simply because it creates a bit more contrast. And
Mhm.
then with the setups that are more pastel, so the cream ones or the pale pinks and things like that, so I use the bigger octobox there, the 150 centimeter. But yeah, that is the meat and potatoes of the lighting, and it's
Okay,
simply
perfect.
a case of just moving the key light around to get a specific look.
So let's talk about your gear. Like, is there any specific lenses you like to work with? Cameras? Like, you just give me just a basic informations about your, the camera stuff.
Yeah, so I shoot with several cameras, but the main work camera is a Fujifilm GFX 50S.
Okay.
So I've used that for 3 years. I also have some Canon DSLRs as well. I sometimes shoot on I have a 5D Classic,
Hmm.
which I absolutely love. But the work is shot on the GFX, and I use two lenses for that: the
Hmm.
63 millimeter f2.8. So that
Hmm.
looks like a 50 mil on full frame, and I have the 110 mil f2, which the full frame equivalent is 87 millimeters.
Hmm.
And yeah, those are the only two I have.
Hmm.
So I've had a few others on loan from Fuji, the 80 millimeter, for example, which is really, really nice. But I mean, most of this stuff is shot on the 63 millimeter, which
Okay.
interestingly is the one. It seems to get the worst. If you look at the online Fujifilm groups, the Facebook groups and stuff, it gets a bad press. People don't like that lens as much as the others, but I shoot the
Mhm.
majority of my work on it,
Works for
and
you.
yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay, so let's I have a question about so you have a shoot, you've done it, you go for those shots, and now is time for making this final selection, because I believe, like every photographer nowadays, we just going for the session and then we just try to pick up all the essence from it. So
Mhm.
what is, in your opinion, the flavor of the good portrait? Like, how you look at your images, what is important for you? Is the lighting, is the face expression, is the whole idea, like how you analyze your images, and how you kind of picking those ones which you really really like, based on what criteria?
Okay, so the first kind of filter is removing anything where there's any technical problem.
Okay.
Um, it, which I know sounds obvious, but it just makes choosing things much easier. And then after that, it's entirely connection based. So
Hmm.
assuming you know there aren't any actual mistakes in the photo, it's the connection of the person in the picture, and I don't worry too much about um, some of the technical things like cropping problems. So some of my pictures, they will not be cropped in the by the rules, if I can put it in that way. I mean, they mostly are, I think, but I don't let that stop me from choosing a good picture. That wouldn't be a reason to reject something, unless the crop looked absolutely dreadful.
Hmm.
But it's the connection. So assuming I haven't made any mistakes with the lighting, any of the other stuff like focus issues or whatever. But I
Mhm.
spend quite a long time in the shoot
Mhm.
getting stuff right so that the selection at the end is pretty straightforward.
Mhm.
So I try and be as practical about it as possible in the shoot. And I will, if I need to spend another 10 minutes playing with the lighting or whatever, I
Mhm.
always do that rather than think, okay, I'm going to try and fix it in Photoshop,
Yeah.
which is ultimately, it
Yeah.
always
Of
turns out
course.
to be disastrous if I try and do that.
Absolutely. So how long usually a session, how long time you spend with each person shooting? Like it's hour, 2 hours, 3 hours? Because this is one of the also the most interesting feedbacks I've been getting from all those like top photographers is like keep shooting because it's a learning even process throughout a shoot, right? Because we need to warm up, we need to get our subject warm up, we need to get our eyes warmed up, and then and also that's what I see from my, I don't know if you, I'm sure you see the same, but as soon as you start looking at those images, and the progression of the shoot, the shots are getting better and better and better, right? And then it's just like this, you plummeting, right? So now it's over. But I found quite fascinating that even it's a process throughout a photo shoot that you just looking for the lighting, for the expressions, for the connection. It's just a journey throughout different aspects just to get you to those very very interesting shots. So I'm guessing you have the same, but I just want to hear a little bit more how this process look like on your end.
Okay. Well, I think the length of time can actually be quite changeable. It depends
Mhm.
who you are with. Assuming, I mean, for some of the jobs that I do, it's a very short amount of time
Mhm.
with the person, and if that is the case, it tends to be because they are people that are used to being in front of the camera and they can do everything really quickly. That's really nice when that's the case. If I'm, sometimes shooting for, 2, 3 hours or something like that, that is also fine because it means if there's, I can devote the day to doing it. It means everybody's relaxed. And one thing that I try and be aware of all the time is not overshooting, because it's extremely tiring for everybody involved. As soon as I have enough good ones, I
Mhm.
just stop,
Mhm.
and we can change things up. Because even if you're working with somebody that's used to being photographed all the time, it is doing all the moving and the posing and the concentrating and the expressions. I think it's very tiring for the
Mhm.
the person in front of the camera, and so I'm always mindful of their needs. And as soon as I've got a few really good ones, we can just move on then. And I will double check with anybody else, any the word stakeholder, I hate that word,
Mhm.
but any other stakeholders in the shoot who once the pictures are in the bag, we can just move on. I don't keep going for the sake of it, because
Mhm.
everybody gets
Tired.
everyone gets fed up and tired. Yeah.
Yeah. And I also noticed like at some point there's no way you can get anything out of the person. It's just it's they shutting
Yeah.
down and they
Hmm.
overtired and they like completely, I would say their mind goes somewhere else and there's no way you can get into them. So
Yeah.
I think with the time we can also, with the experience we can sense that really quickly that okay, you know what, the shoot is over, there's no more juice uh
Yeah.
left, and then we have to just move on. Yeah. So
I mean, and
yeah.
sorry,
Go.
I was just going to say one other thing.
Sure.
I mean, people very often do warm up into the shoot, but
Mhm.
I often find that the best shots are right at the beginning as well.
Mhm.
Very often the light tests turn into keepers for me. I think it's because everybody is, with the light
Fresh.
tests, everybody's fresh and relaxed, and
Mhm.
there's no pressure to get it right. And for ironically, um, they are very often the keepers. The light tests, because
That's true.
everyone's feeling good.
Absolutely. So let's move on to the retouching part because, as
Mhm.
we probably all know, retouching is a huge part of photography nowadays, and there is no way that we can skip it. Could you tell me a little more about your retouching process? How it look like? How deep you're going into the retouching, um, and then yeah, let's kind of talk a little bit about the editing part.
Yeah. So My starting point with retouching is to get as much right in the camera as possible.
Mhm.
I know that sounds very obvious, but I will work at the lighting and any other things to do with the setup in the studio to make sure that the retouching is as little as I can get away with. And it's I think it's very straightforward, the principles of what I do. So I the work is divided up into the cleanup and the retouch and the color grading,
Mhm.
and so I do everything the slow way. So I do healing and cloning on the skin and dodging and burning, and that's pretty much it. Obviously, the best starting point for all of that is good hair and makeup,
Mhm.
and that's a obviously a huge bonus if you're working with good hair and makeup people. And then with the color grading, I mean, the again, the starting point with that is good color combinations in the set itself. So making sure that the clothing matches the backgrounds, making sure that the clothing is a good choice for the skin and hair tone of the person in the picture. And so what I'm doing technically is the majority of the work is done using Photoshop's native tools. So I use the selective color adjustment layer and the color balance. That's how I do almost all of it. And I do a bit of the work in exposure. So the program formerly called Alien Skin. I think everybody still calls it Alien Skin.
Yeah.
But I will do a first pass in Alien Skin to just to bump up the contrast a bit and
Mhm.
to put a bit of an S curve in the image. It's nothing that you can't do in Photoshop, of course,
Mhm.
but I just prefer the way it looks with that
Mhm.
first pass in an exposure. So, and that's how I do it. So I will do a little bit of liquefy and reshape to it's primarily to fix bulges in clothes and to
Mhm.
reshape hair and stuff like that. I will do uh, nips and tucks with liquefy if people ask for it specifically, but otherwise I wouldn't do that. And I know that liquefy obviously has a bad name for you know producing pictures with unrealistic body images and
Mhm.
stuff like that. So I'm very, very careful
Mhm.
of that. I'm mindful of the effect it has. I'm a father of girls, so you know, it's all of that is very important. So yeah, it's I don't know whether that is enough detail for you with the
Oh
retouch.
yeah, yeah. No, no, no.
I
It's fantastic. Like I truly appreciate it because even the entire answer, because you just not only go really really deep into this, but it seems like most of us have kind of similar approach, right? Like we extremely careful, and I think, like, I don't know how your learning process of Photoshop look like, but I think at the beginning everyone is just like overdoing everything, right? Because they just want
mm,
to have this whole thing stand out, and they just pushing colors, they pushing, and then with the time and just kind of training your eye to see things differently, we just kind of starting scaling down to the point that this whole thing is not even noticeable that we've done anything.
mm,
uh, and yeah, so this is absolutely fantastic what you were saying, because I think for a lot of people who are watching, they at the beginning probably of their journey, or they want to improve their work, but I think they need to learn from those people who know, don't push it too much, just scale it back, right? And then this is exactly what you're saying. You're extremely careful with Photoshop, and then you're just trying to enhance everything just to give this little bit of extra touch to your portraits, just to kind of elevate some of those elements and colors and all this stuff, just to kind of have this specific style. So tell me, like, how does, like, let's kind of talk a little bit more about a Photoshop. This is actually my question. Like, were you starting working on your images, and what I mean by retouching them right away, or you were like outsourcing at the beginning, or and while you were learning Photoshop, or you just started, okay, I need to learn this? Because as we probably also know, Photoshop is something that is like another skill level, right? It's not something we can learn overnight and then like, oh, take some courses and see some stuff on the YouTube. We need to also train our eyes and see things from completely different perspective. And for me, it was just years of trying stuff out just to learn this stuff. So how does process of learning Photoshop look like for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first of all, I do the majority of my own retouching. Some of it is outsourced at times, or if if it's shot for a client who is going to use specific retouches for it, then of course that's fine, which is what you get with the editorial stuff. But I think in the beginning, like everybody else, I was definitely overdoing it, and it's a case of just learning to be gentle with it. And so I learned from YouTube and online courses, and various friends that are full-time retouchers that helped me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the thing that it took me the longest time to learn how to do in a way that I liked is dodging and burning. And in the
Mm-hmm.
beginning, it sounds when you're introduced to dodging and burning, it seems kind of unlikely that it's going to be as helpful as it actually is. But that was the thing. It's the most time-consuming thing to do. It is definitely the hardest thing. And
That
it was
also has
just
the biggest impact on the image too, right? I found.
yeah, it does. And I think if you've got a huge pile of retouching to do, it can seem overwhelming if you
Mm-hmm.
think, oh my god, I've got to do all of this work manually. But you do get quick at doing it. But it is the thing that takes the most practice. And I just learned by, initially I wasn't very good, the same as everybody else. And I think I certainly do less. It's not I'm doing less and less retouching.
Mm-hmm.
I think the retouching that I'm doing just looks less obvious. That's
Yeah.
I think that's what it is. And I think if you look at professional photography from 10 or 15 years ago, there was a lot of retouching in it, not all of which looked good. And I think we kind of get used to seeing images which are hugely airbrushed, and I think it's just these things just change with the times, don't they? There are all kinds of issues at play, social issues, and so on, that mean we move in a certain direction. And I think where I am at the moment is, sorry to repeat it again, but just getting as much as I can right at the shoot, good hair and makeup, good lighting, and then the retouching is a case of helping that person to just look like the best version of them, rather than doing something which is unrealistic or unattractive or just weird, basically.
Yeah. And I want to add one more little thing, which I hope you agree with me, that, the technology also have changed over the last decades. And I'm talking about cameras, I'm talking about even Photoshop itself. Because right now, I'm sure you remember, back in the days, the Photoshop didn't have that kind of ability what we can do with this today, right? Not to mention, we as a photographers, we developed all those techniques to retouch those images, right? So now we have access to learn those stuff right at the get-go. Like back in the days, nobody was sharing anything, right? I remember when I started Photoshop and you ask about like, how did you do that? Like they would never tell you. I was like, this is my secret. You got to figure out yourself. And I think the process of learning was much longer, where nowadays not only there's access to like instant access to all this, like if you have a problem even like with anything with your image, you can Google it, go to YouTube, and someone somewhere will tell you how to do it, right? So that's something I think which is also interesting, and also easier for so many photographers that they can access this knowledge right on the spot. Perfect. So
Yeah.
that's what I want to add to your answer, which that's amazing. So tell me, based on, let's say, your almost 10 years of career shooting professionally, how's your style have changed? Do you see like a drastic change over the years, or you kind of staying quite consistent with everything what you do?
Well, I think it's quite consistent, and there's a couple of reasons for that. So, firstly, I mean, I shoot a range of things, to be honest with you, but the work which I put out for, which is basically promotional, which is the stuff that is on my portfolio, things that are on
Mhm.
my Instagram, I try and keep the style consistent, because I think when people are spending money on photography, they want to have a fairly certain idea about the outcome. So if they book me to do a shoot, I'm going to
Mhm.
shoot it the way that they would expect, effectively. So I try and keep the style quite consistent. Of
Mhm.
course, I'm always worrying about, am I doing the same thing all the time and not innovating? So I'm trying to find a balance between keeping a style which is consistent with the lighting styles, with the set designs, and that type of stuff, but always evolving. And I would like to think that I always have my eyes open to interesting influences, whether they're from not just photography, but all kinds of other visual arts. So paintings. I go to galleries frequently. I'm cinema fan, and so I try and take my inspiration from all those places. I read magazines feverishly. I still have subscriptions to paper magazines, which I love. So yeah, it's a combination of doing the things that are going to bring in the work. So
Mhm.
doing things that people know me for, and also trying to have a degree of innovation as well. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's what everybody's trying to do, I
Mhm.
suppose. But yeah, that's my approach.
Yeah, but I just want to share one little thing here, because I've been always kind of like a nail it from people like, oh, you're doing the same thing over and over and over again, like there's nothing new into it. But you know what I actually discovered over the years, that doing kind of the same style of photography, like you're shooting portrait or headshots, and you have your already specific style, you still can kind of go beyond lighting. You can go beyond other stuff, right? Because in headshots, the stuff what I do, I started learning about face expressions. I started learning about psychology, about all stuff which I never thought I have to kind of like dive into to understand this whole process a little bit better. So I think the more deep you are into this whole thing, there are new things you can learn, right? And there's the things
Mm.
which you would not even expect you have to learn about certain things, right? And that kind of lead me to the next question, because also what I've noticed in your work, you're really good at capturing people's personality, like how you develop this stuff, like how you try to connect with specific subjects to bring that personality to life, and kind of showcase that on your images.
Ooh, that is a good question. Now, I would love to be able to say that it is me that causes all of that, but
Yes.
I think
Oh, you can say that.
I think what it is, I photograph a lot of people that are used to being photographed,
Hmm.
and a lot of those people are very good at. They have a great game face for the camera, if I can put it in that way. Now, that is something um, that kind of terrifies me a bit. So I've had a few photos of myself taken in recent sessions just for fun, and being on the other side of the camera for me is kind of petrifying. And so I think for the people that are experienced at doing it, they have a great game face. They are just like, whether or not they are actual actors, they if you photograph professional models or dancers, anyone that has a sort of front facing performance role, um the good ones, they can they go into their role, and they can just do it really well. And I think when I'm photographing people that are who are not that kind of person, they do other kind of jobs, or they're not working in the arts or something like that, I will just try and ask people to do natural things. And I think one of the most useful directions that I can talk about is that there is a most of the I would say most of the expressions that I am shooting are quite serious. Now, the reason for that is that I don't really ask people to smile ever unless they want to. And the reason for that is that people can express more, in my opinion. There's a greater range of things that can be expressed when they are not smiling. And it doesn't have to be ultra serious or anything like that. But I just think a greater range of emotions can be expressed. But with those, coming back to a point I was trying to make before I got distracted, there is a fine line between looking focused and bored. And with non-smiling expressions, the direction I will give people is to look at me in a kind of focused and engaged way, because we all want pictures that sort of look relaxed in a sense and natural. But I think there is a difference between when we are feeling relaxed and natural inside. On the outside, it can look bored. That's my observation. And in order to look relaxed and natural in a picture, I think you actually have to direct people to think about being engaged in the process, and that I think that is a useful direction for people that are unused to being shot. And if they want to go ahead and smile, of course, we can try a whole range of things. But with people that are used to being photographed, the range of expressions that they can just do, like a stage actor or something like that, it's just amazing. And I'm actually quite lazy at directing people, because most of the clients that I'm shooting know how to do it really well, much better than I can direct.
Yeah, the one thing what I've learned over the years is also that, if people put mind into the session or into the shoot, it always helps to kind of get their engagement, right? Because quite often, especially, like I know portraiture is a little bit different, but with headshots, I can see when someone's mind is like drifting away, and they look at you, they're staring, but you're not there. And the one thing also what I've learned over the years, that entire face structure also changes, right? If they're not focused and they're not engaged and they're not kind of like thinking about what they're doing. And I can now clearly see that for those images, that, at this moment, that person for, let's say, 5 minutes, she was not there. And then, everything is just a little bit different. But, that's exactly is what you're saying, right? As soon as they start being focused on the shoot, they engage with the camera, they engage with you, all of a sudden those personalities, those expressions, they start coming out. So
yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so now I would love to kind of jump into your photos, and then what I would like to hear from you, if you could just, we're gonna go through a bunch of different images, and then you can tell me a little bit more about, each shoot, just a kind of little short feedback about the shot, about the concept, and about what you were trying to achieve with this particular session. So let's start with this
Okay.
beautiful image. I love this really beautiful orange background. If you could just tell me a little bit more about this specific image.
Yeah, of course. So this was a shoot for her agency. She's a professional model.
Okay.
And I mean, we were just going for images that were a range of natural and happy and serious, I guess, in the expression. I didn't need to direct her to do anything. And with the setup that we were using here, I was going for, I mean, she chose her own wardrobe, which was amazing. And I just wanted to go for something with a kind of warm and earthy kind of tones with the background. Now that the thing that is behind her is an old-fashioned room divider.
Okay.
Again, purchased from Facebook Marketplace for almost nothing.
Yeah.
And I have loads. I've probably got 7 or 8 of those.
Oh wow.
In
Okay.
different colors and different textures. Some of them antiques. I think they were, in the early 20th century and in the 19th century, people used these all the time when they had homes without many rooms in them, so they just used those to create mini rooms. But they're pretty good as backgrounds.
Absolutely.
And light. I talked about the lighting style before, which was the 100 centimeter octobox and the gobo, and we were just
and what I really love about the face expression is amazing, but now when you explain about his background, kudos to you, because this is another example that you don't need to spend, I don't know, thousands of dollars for something, some really expensive background, you can really start shopping, looking at marketplaces, places where they can sell you stuff for nothing, and then they can really be amazing element of your work, right? So
Mm.
this is really cool.
Yeah, I buy tons of stuff on Facebook Marketplace,
Hmm.
and it's. I think the thing about it, and again, this is different depending on which part of the world you are in, because
Hmm.
the thing about Marketplace is that it's local, and but in my experience, people that advertise their stuff on there are not looking for enormous prices for the stuff they
Yes.
sell, and they are open to an offer as well. You know,
Yes.
I will usually make somebody an offer. If they don't want to accept it, of course, that's
Yeah.
fine. But people see it's different than eBay, where that is a, it's a business
Mhm.
platform basically, and so there's,
Yes.
with Marketplace, there's a bit more leeway for negotiation, I would say, and it's fun to kind of get in the car and drive somewhere and pick something up,
Mhm.
and you
Yeah.
know it's cool.
And sometimes people even want to like get rid of this stuff, right? So they really open, just pay me anything and take this, right? I've been in those
Seriously,
situations before.
yeah, and I have quite a bit of studio furniture, one of everything, and I really love mid-century furniture,
Mhm.
like designer furniture, basically. Not that I have a kind of budget that really stretches to it, but I bought several, Eames chairs and a Mies van der Rohe Barcelona from people that didn't like them. They, in several cases, I bought them from people who had a spouse that was like a furniture collector or something like that, and they hated the chair, and they end up selling them for almost nothing, because people just want to get rid of stuff. So it is, it is a good place for finding bargains, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's go to the next image.
Okay, so this was taken at a lighting workshop in London last year,
Mhm.
and yeah, so the concept for this was, we started with the wardrobe. It's a cut the it's not a Chanel suit that she's wearing, but it's that same kind of
Idea.
style, and so I, because of the nice check that's in the suit, I thought I could get away with some interesting textures, and I very rarely actually use the gray. I have several gray backdrops, and I don't use them that much, even though they have great versatility. I
Mhm.
don't really use them, but it matched her suit in this case. The clamps and the stuff that you can see in there, they all have a practical purpose for holding the backdrops in place. Of course, you could Photoshop them out, but I like that slightly
Look.
industrial look that you get from leaving the clamps in, and it helps the with layering up the backdrops in that way. It somehow tricks the eye, I think, into creating a bit more space in the picture. So it was shot in a pretty small space, but I think stacking up those textures in that way is is a way of mentally creating a bit more room. I don't even know if that makes
Mhm.
sense, but that's
Yeah,
the
no, no, it
that is the
does. It
concept.
does.
If you,
Absolutely, yeah. I,
yeah,
I I can really see that. And then you just adding this dimension to the image, right? Because if it's flat, it's just empty space. But when you start creating those different, patterns and then different colors, and they kind of like, see, it looks like it's dimensional more. But that's
yeah,
just my take
and
on
if
it.
you're, yeah, and I was going to say, the stool that she's sitting on, I use that stool in almost all of my shoots.
Hmm.
It is so it was made in the 1950s, and it is a school science lab stool.
Okay.
And anybody um, who went to a British school will
They know.
recognize those. Probably elsewhere as well. But again, I bought that for like 10 or 20 pounds or something,
Hmm. Well,
almost nothing, very, very cheap. And the cool thing about it is, again, this is super nerdy. The seat goes up and down. It's adjustable,
yes,
so
it's like a
it makes it very Yeah, it twists
Yeah.
up and down, and that's very useful, obviously for obvious reasons, which is why I use it so
I
frequently.
use not
Um,
the same, but similar. I'm shooting at the model agency, and they have like not the same. It's a wooden one, but it has the same kind of concept. And then you have this like little screw which kind of can lift it up the seat up and down. So this is exactly similar, idea. So that's why this one is even better because it's more rustic, right? And has this like.
yeah,
Okay, so let's jump into the next image. So we talked a little bit about it already. So why don't we maybe move on to the next one? Tell me a little bit about this one.
yeah. So this that was actually shot in the same way as the previous one, with
Okay.
the gobo and the kind of autumn colors, and with this picture, I think it works extra well because of her gingery red hair. So
Hmm.
it's all of that color palette works very well with people who look like her. And I think with I don't photograph people with gingery hair too frequently. Actually, I'd love to do
Explore
more
this.
of that.
Yeah.
But they have certain color palettes that work amazingly well. So the most obvious one is green, but blue backgrounds work very well, and black and cream. So
Hmm.
those are my
Favorite.
absolute favorite uh, palettes for redhead people.
Yeah. Well, now you need someone with the red hair and then a lot of freckles, right? That would be just like,
Yeah.
okay, let's go to this one.
Oh, yeah. So in this, again, the starting point was the wardrobe choice. Now,
Hmm.
I don't really shoot that much lilac. It's a statement color. It doesn't look good on everybody.
Hmm.
And so I shoot with it fairly infrequently, to be honest. I think it looked really nice here. And so what I was trying to do was to balance that overall pastel tonality of the image with the drapes.
Hmm.
And that is, I think that the fabric on the suit is ordinarily something I wouldn't sort of choose, but I really like it here.
Hmm.
And she is a very creative person who is amazing at wardrobe design and set design, and has really good uh really good vision. And she is actually she's an amazing model, but she also organizes. She is like an art director. Basically, she's very, very good at organizing shoots and coming up with concepts, and we worked on it together. But yeah, that pastel look is, I shoot it very, very frequently because it
Hmm.
is super flattering on, probably more so on, I photograph that look more for women rather than men. But it is very, very flattering. I mean, it's actually quite hard to get the lighting wrong in
Hmm.
this
Yeah.
setup. As long as the big octobox is vaguely pointing in the correct direction, it's going to look great.
Perfect. Okay, so let's jump to a little more dramatic lighting. I think this one is a little bit more.
Yeah. So
Oh,
that was lit with the 100 centimeter deep octa. And if people are, so Elinchrom make deep and shallow octa boxes. And the difference with them is the deep ones have a more focused beam of light, so you have to be a bit more careful about the direction you fire them. And with the fill light for almost all of these photos, not the cream ones, but for pretty much everything else, I'm using a colored gel on the bounce lights. It's a saturation gel. It's 188 Roscoe or Lee 188, and I put that in front of the bounce lights, and it essentially makes people's skin look good, really good. And if I've got my facts right, it started off life as a kind of cinema gel, so for cinema cameras to make people in movies look as good as they can. So this kind of look is with a feathered key light pretty close. So I think on this image, I would have had the key light very close to her and then removed it in the post production.
absolutely. No, that's a gorgeous image. I really love it. Like yeah, everything is just perfect. Okay, so let's go into more glamour shots.
Yeah. So again, this is just a variation on the cream type one that we just talked about. And with the idea with this one was to get in as much texture and shape. And with this sort of limited tonal palette that I sometimes use, one of the ways that I try and make the pictures, interesting or noteworthy is by combining lots of different textures. And I think if you have loads of different colors, all of the texture stuff can become a bit too much. But I think as everything in this photo is a shade of cream, we can go big on the textures, and it doesn't become too much. And I think even with the chair, that's the Barcelona chair. Even with the textured back, it looks really cool and creates I don't know whether you'd call that a leading line or whatever.
Yes.
But I've tried to frame everything up with all of the textiles in this picture so that the curves in the photo look nice and that everything is pointing in towards her. So although it looks somewhat chaotic, maybe, I don't know, the idea is that all of those different textural and compositional elements do serve a purpose.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's jump to a couple other my favorite shots of yours. This one.
Okay, so with this, the styling it's not explicitly military, but I think it has a military suggestion. Now the background is one that I use quite frequently. That does have a military association, actually. That is a tarpaulin, which previously belonged to the Swedish army. So I bought it from an army surplus place in Sweden. And the boxes are a combination of ammunition crates and old drinks crates, and we sort of built the look up around, the colors are kind of military. It's not green, but I think it has that sort of nice military look. And just with the posing style, the setup was designed so that he could pose in a way that was flattering for his body type and everything, to do what you might call traditionally masculine poses or whatever. Again, lit with the 100 centimeter octobox and the gelled bounce strobes. So
perfect. One of the things which I absolutely love when I talk to people like you, whenever they share, the stories behind those images, because I think we're living in a kind of crazy world where we're just scrolling free shots, and he's like, "Oh, I like it. Okay, well, let's move on," right? But none of us understands and then kind of know, all those little details which you shared right now. For example, like this is military, background, which you bought it somewhere in different country, and then you have those boxes which also have some meaningful, have some meaning into the image. I wish, I don't know, maybe some kind of technology will do that, will give us this like more information about specific images, because then it's like, now I can, I admire the image, but now because I know more of it, it's even, I think it's even like cooler to understand this whole concept. This is just fascinating. So thank you for sharing this. And then, yeah, this is really nicely put together, and there's this entire story behind it, which I think should be shared everywhere.
thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, let's jump into the chairs you were talking about that nobody.
Yep. So this is actually one of my favorite pictures ever.
Okay, that's why I
And
leave it at the end,
I'll
just so you know, because this is
oh,
also one
okay.
of the favorites. I because I always leave the
Yeah.
best one at the end. Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, firstly, the portrait subject, he's a very, very talented man. I did not have to direct him in any way. He's amazing in front of the camera. And so the way that we built up this look, we again, we started from the wardrobe choices, and again, there's something vaguely sort of military about those colors, I think, with the the kind of green pants and the red sweater. And so the color choices that I made with the setup are obvious there to match what he was wearing. The chair that he's sitting on is quite interesting. It's an original 1930s Art Deco club chair, and I purchased that as a restoration project. Or the person selling it was so beaten up that it was advertised as a restoration project. Now I went to have a look at it, and I'm not what you would call a handy type of person at all. There was no way that I was going to be able to do anything with that, but it looks so historic, and I'm sure it could tell a few stories if it could. And so I think it gives the image a kind of authenticity, because although it's not the furniture is not valuable in any way, but it's something which is unconventional and unusual, and something that you don't see every day. And I think with the posing style, I think with all of these kind of images, I'm just going for natural and relaxed and confident, but with real engagement with the camera, that's really why I think the image is successful. In a technical sense, you can see that he's making several triangles with his body shape, which are, that's a technical thing that photographers will talk about with the composition, and it helps with the geometry of the image. But again, the technical things behind it are very similar to the way that I'm lighting my other pictures. The background that's immediately behind him, I like the paint splodges of texture that are on there. Gives a nice, I don't know, a nice touch, I guess. But yeah, that's
how I did absolutely
it.
stunning. And then I think the colors, the patterns, the balance in the image is just pure perfection. So I don't think you can kind of pass by this image and don't kind of stop for a second and start kind of like really looking at it and analyzing, and kind of like enjoying it, because this is like all those little elements just bring something interesting to the table, and then just make this image extremely unique. So I love it personally.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's we passed the hour a little bit already. So the last question I would like to ask you is, like, what would be the one advice you would give to photographers who are starting off? Like, what would you like to share with them based on your long experience, shooting portraits, amazing portraits? What would you tell them?
Okay, it takes a little while to get good, and you have to practice. The same as anything that is worth getting good at. You have to work hard at it, accept that it's not going to be very good in the beginning, as in your work probably isn't going to be very good, but it is something like anything else that you can practice. You can get good at it pretty quickly. In terms of professional advice, I think you have to have a few plates spinning to do well in photography, and you have to, you just have to, it's not a kind of build it and they will come career. You have to, be on the phone all the time, chasing opportunities, marketing, promotion, doing a whole range of things that you might sort of think, well, I didn't know I was going to be photographing a bag of pasta to earn my living, or whatever it is you end up doing. But you have to have a few things going. So I have, as well as my shooting, I do the workshops, the online courses, the various kinds of photography that people probably wouldn't associate with me, but I think you have to kind of keep your marketing and your promotion consistent, so that people know they know who you are. But I think you have to do a range of stuff, or most people I know that do photography have to do a range of things to keep everything moving. And it's just, it's shooting 10% of the time. The other 90% is promo, retouching, hassling people on the phone, invoicing people, all of that, the usual boring business stuff.
Perfect, David. That was absolutely fantastic interview. I had such a great time chatting with you, and thank you for allowing me to dive into your world. I've learned so much from you today, and I hope we're gonna have a ability to talk again in the near future, because I think we could spend another couple hours talking about photography. And that was, yeah, extremely thoughtful and insightful, conversation we had, and yeah, I enjoyed every minute of it, so thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Okay, everyone, thank you for watching, and yeah, I'll chat with you guys very soon. Bye bye.